Greetings to all. Today I am here to talk about the agriculture exports quantitative restrictions under WTO. Before moving on to the topic, we need to understand what is WTO. The World Trade Organization is the only global international organization dealing with the rules of trade between nations. The goal of WTO is to help the producers of goods and services, exporters and importers conduct their business. Now, let's see the recent developments in agricultural exports. Ministry of Commerce and Industry introduced Agriculture Export Policy 2018 with an aim to double farmers' income by 2022 by doubling agriculture exports from India and integrating Indian farmers and agricultural products in India to the global value chain. In order to increase the exports of bamboo products, local artisans are supported by National Bamboo Mission. Let's talk about India's agricultural export during COVID-19. It rose remarkably despite COVID-19 may cross $50 billion in 2021-22. This year, the country is also expected to witness the highest ever export of meat, marine products and rice with around 50% share of rice exports in the world market. India's agricultural export, after reaching $43.23 billion in 2013-14, slumped to $33.68 billion in 2016-17. Despite the pandemic, a conspicuous turnaround occurred in these exports, growing to $41.32 billion in 2020-21. This momentum is expected to continue in the current year as well, and India's agriculture exports can, for the first time, cross $50 billion in 2021-22. Now, we move on to the objectives of India's agriculture export policy. They are: first one is to double agricultural export from present $30 billion to $60 billion by 2022 and reach $100 billion in the next few years thereafter with a stable trade policy regime. And second is to diversify our export basket, destinations and boost high value and value added agricultural exports, including focus on perishables. And the third is to provide an institutional mechanism for pursuing market access, tackling barriers, and deal with sanitary and phytosanitary issues. Fourth is to strive to double India's share in world agriculture export by integrating with global value chain at the earliest. And the fifth is enable farmers to get benefit of export opportunities in overseas market. Then let's see the quantitative restrictions in agricultural export. Under Article 11 of the GATT, generally prohibits the quantitative restrictions on the importation or the exportation of any products. One reason for this prohibition is that quantitative restrictions are considered to have a greater protective effect than tariff measures and are more likely to distort free trade. When a trading partner uses quantitative restrictions, it is impossible to export in excess of the quota, no matter how price competitive foreign products may be. Thus, QRs are considered to have such a distortional effect on trade that their prohibition is one of the fundamental principles of the GATT. While the general elimination of QRs covers all import and export related measures, including seasonal and de facto measures, the GATT and certain WTO agreements allow them under specific circumstances. Several WTO members have notified that they maintain QRs in one form or the other, including widely used measures such as prohibitions or restrictions relating to trade in nuclear materials, narcotic drugs, weapons, and several measures to protect the environment. When a member introduces or maintains QRs, it must ensure that it is administered in a non-discriminatory manner. Also, the quantitative restrictions increase the price of the imported products. They are susceptible to corruption because they are administered through an import and licensing system with government officials deciding to grant or not to grant on import license. Other than this, there are some GATT provisions regarding the QRs. Let's see them. Quantitative import and export restrictions against WTO members are prohibited by Article 11(1) of the GATT. GATT provisions, however, provide some exemptions for QRS applied on a limited or temporary basis that describes in detail QRS explicitly provided for the WTO agreement. First one is exemptions provided in GATT Article 11. Under this, export prohibitions or restrictions temporarily applied to prevent or relieve critical shortages of foodstuffs essential to the exporting WTO members. Import and export prohibitions necessary to the application of standards or regulation for the classification, grading, or marketing of commodities in international trade. Import restriction on any agricultural or fisheries product necessary to the enforcement of governmental measures which operate to restrict production of the domestic product or for certain other purposes. And the second is exemptions provided in other articles. Under this, there are two categories in the provision of exemptions. First is exemptions for non-economic reasons. Under this, exemptions for security reasons. And the second is exemptions for economic reasons. It states that QRS necessary to the development of a particular industry by a WTO member in the early stages of economic development. QRS is necessary to prevent sudden increase in import from causing serious injury to domestic producers. QRS imposed pursuant to a specific waiver of obligations granted in exceptional circumstances by the Ministerial Conference. Now, let's talk about the agriculture exports in Kerala. Kerala, which is the spices garden of India, is home to all major items of exports like pepper, cardamom, ginger, turmeric, curry powder, spice oils and vanilla, nutmeg and maize, etc. During 2006-7, the state's share to total pepper export from the country was above 88% both in quantity and value. The export of vanilla from Kerala increased from 22.18 ton in 2005-6 to 56.75 ton in 2007-8 and earned rupees 635.39 lakhs against rupees 405.35 lakhs in previous year, achieving 56.75% increase in value and 155.9% increase in quantity. Following trade liberalization, while exports of agricultural commodities from the state declined, there was a rise in imports which led to fall in domestic prices of commodities and rise in price volatility. This intensified the problems already faced by the agricultural sector of the state due to high cost of cultivation, stagnant productivity, etc. Unlike other states in the country, agricultural trade liberalization adversely affected the agricultural sector in the state as more than 80% of the agricultural commodities or products produced in the state are dependent on the situation of domestic or international markets. The export intensity of production of some of the crops like pepper, cardamom, cashew, etc. is high in the state. As the Kerala's economy was a relatively closed economy until mid-1990s, cultivation of commercial crops such as coconut, rubber, tea, coffee, spices, etc. was fairly profitable even without much improvement in productivity and value addition because of protected internal market and prospects for exports. However, with the removal of quantitative restrictions and lowering of tariff level on imports, farmers cultivating commercial crops have been affected following higher imports and stiff competition for exports in the international market. That's all about agriculture export quantitative restrictions and